Okay, review video number 1 is going to be on the Constitution, federalism, and public opinion. The notes are for you, so just do what you need to do in order to study. The big question when we created the Constitution was how should we govern? There are a lot of theories of government. The big question is going to be how do we keep our government from becoming another monarchy? So, one theory is democratic theory, and this is the idea that governments should govern at the consent of the governed through the vote. So the people should give their consent by picking who they want to lead them. Pluralist theory believes a group should compete for those votes and that this will result in a compromise. That's how we get our political parties and interest groups, and that by working together and competing for attention, they'll work together to get the best result for everyone. Elite theory would suggest that the rich are going to be in control and that they're going to be able to overpower the system and get the votes they need and run the show. Bureaucratic theory suggests that the bureaucrats control the government by making all the decisions because they're unsupervised. If there's 4.5 million of them, no one can really watch them all, so they're the ones who are actually running the show. And then hyperpluralism believes that there's so many groups that this could cause gridlock and ineffectiveness. Now, political scientists argue about these different theories. What we do know, though, is that we went with a democratic theory. Now, in the United States, we are a representative government, which is a republic. We're not a direct democracy. Direct democracies are those that directly vote on the laws that they want. And we do not do that in our national government. Now, when we were first creating our government, we started by creating an Articles of Confederation. This was known as a very weak document because the states were stronger than the national government. Here's the reasons why, the weaknesses. 1, each state retains its sovereignty, which means they couldn't actually be told what to do. They were independent. 2, it was a unicameral Congress, as in one house with one vote per state. You needed a supermajority, 9 out of 13, to pass a law, which meant they couldn't get much done because no one could really agree. North and the South were divided about 50-50, so getting 9 was almost impossible. And if you wanted to change anything in the Articles of Confederation, you needed everyone to agree, even more impossible, so you couldn't even fix it once you realized it was broken. There was no executive branch, no national court system, no control of taxation, no national army or navy, and no national system of money. Basically, there was no national government. It was barely doing anything. There were a few accomplishments, but they're not worth mentioning. So that gets thrown out. The Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia is called, and 2 plans are presented. 1 is a New Jersey plan. Once again, they went with a weak national government. They wanted to keep it just like the Articles of Confederation with one house. The states would have equal votes. Again, you don't see many changes except this one. Congress would be able to collect taxes and fines and have power over trade. And they would also add an executive and judicial branch. So they did have some changes, but not very many. The next plan was the Virginia plan. This one wanted a strong national government. They'd still have state governments too. The national government could enforce its own laws and collect taxes. It would be proportional and bicameral, 2 House legislators. A House of Representatives, larger House elected by the people, and a Senate, a smaller House that was selected by the larger House. It would also have 3 branches. Now here, the main thing is, the Virginia plan wanted it to be proportional, so that big states would have more votes, whereas New Jersey still wanted every state to be equal. Because of that, we have to come up with the Great Compromise. We do end up with a bicameral legislature, much like the Virginia plan, with a House of Representatives membership apportioned according to the state populations, plus 3/5 of the slave population, otherwise known as the 3/5 Compromise, and an upper house, the Senate, which would have 2 members from each state elected by the state legislatures, though today we elect them popularly by the people. And this is what brought in the New Jersey plan. So Virginia plan and the House of Representatives, and the New Jersey plan with the Senate, the Great Compromise. All right. Now, the principles of the government in the Constitution are our keys to government. We talk about them all the time. Popular sovereignty, separation of powers, checks and balances, limited government, and federalism. You simply have to be able to explain these. If you don't know them by now, please, please, please write them down in there full, complete ways and memorize them. A great way to quiz yourself would be to go ahead and try to do these from memory without looking. Then check. Now, once the Constitution was written, it had to be ratified. Ratified means to be voted on. So there was a debate. We had the Federalists. And what did they think? They favored the Constitution. They wanted that stronger national government. And they said the reasons that'd be okay is because it'd still be a limited government, just like the Madisonian Principles. They'd have separate powers and checks and balances, and that would keep them from getting too strong and overpowering everyone else. And they wrote a bunch of Federalist Papers, which are a series of essays, to support this Constitution. The Anti-Federalists wanted to maintain the stronger states. They didn't want another king on their home soil, and they were worried that there was no Bill of Rights, so there was nothing there to protect the people. They were promised that they would get a Bill of Rights later, and that promise was delivered on when the first 10 amendments were passed 10 years later. Now, to ratify the Constitution, 9 out of 13 states had to vote for it. And as we know, they did. So we have the United States Constitution. Yay! Amending the Constitution. Now, we made sure that in Article 5 of the Constitution it was possible to change. What you have to do to change it is first, you have to propose the amendment, as in write it, and then get it approved by 2/3 of the legislature. So 2/3 of the House of Representatives have to vote yes, 2/3 of the Senate have to vote yes. Then it gets sent to the states to be ratified, voted on, and 3/4 of the state legislatures have to vote for it. Those are the state governments, not the people. Our next concept is federalism. It's, of course, the sharing of power between states and national government. And the idea is that they operate at the same time and are independent. The federal government can only tell the states what to do in a few select instances. Most of the time, they're going to be able to do what they want. As we know, power of the states retain their sovereignty, freedom, and independence. That's what it says in our Constitution. We have delegated powers, those that are given to the national government. Reserved powers, all those that are not delegated, are reserved for the states. Now, originally, there were only a few delegated powers: the power over commerce, business, power over war, power over diplomacy and trade. That's not all that many things. Everything else was then given to the states. States could decide marriage, religion, speech, what to do with guns, etc., etc., etc. All that was left up to the states. Education, health care, roads, state powers. Now, full faith and credit clause in the Constitution makes sure it's clear that states must recognize legal documents from other states. If I get a license in Maryland, I can go to Virginia and still drive. I don't have to get a Virginia license when I go into Virginia. If I get married in the state of New York, I can then travel to the state of Illinois and still be married. I don't have to get a new marriage license just because I moved to Illinois. So that's full faith and credit clause. Privileges and Immunities Clause in the Constitution says that states cannot discriminate against residents of other states. Just because I'm from Maryland and I moved to Virginia doesn't mean you can discriminate against me. All right. Next, we have the Supremacy Clause. Now, as we should know, the Supremacy Clause is what puts the national government above the states in terms of power. Now, judicial review cemented that. McCulloch versus Maryland and Gibbons versus Ogden both used the Supremacy Clause to tell the states that the national government was in fact supreme, that they could do things to states, and that states had no power against them. Now, there's several different kinds of federalism that we've moved through throughout the years. Dual federalism is the idea that the states and the national government are separate. The states do their thing, the national does theirs, and they just stay in their own spheres. We don't do that so much anymore. Now we really use cooperative federalism. It's the idea that the states and national work together. They pool their money. This school, H.D. Woodson, gets money from both the national government in Obama and from the state, D.C. And so all that money is combined to totaling almost $10 million to run this school. All right. And that's what we do. New federalism is this idea of devolution. Over time, power has been given back to the states. Fiscal federalism is a form of cooperative federalism where it has to do with money. Fiscal means money. Now, what this is grants and aid versus mandates. So, a mandate is when the government, national government, is telling the states what to do without giving them any money, like the Civil Rights Act. It's not a choice. Everything else is a choice. Grants and aid are ways of giving money to states to try to get them to do what you want. The old way of doing things with cooperative federalism is a categorical grant. Now, a categorical grant is money that comes with a lot of strings. So if the state wants to take the $300 million check, they can do that. They don't have to say yes, but they can say yes as long as they agree to then meet all the requirements of that money. Right? It's just like if you get money to go to college from Bill and Melinda Gates and you don't go to college, it's not like you get to just pocket the money and run. They're going to take that money back. So it's the same thing with federalism and categorical grants. Now, block grants have fewer strings, and they are a form of new federalism because they're giving more power back to the states. The states have more of a choice of how to spend the money. They'll have to spend it on kind of a range of things. So like a welfare reform from 1996 is a block grant because now instead of telling them everything they have to do exactly with the money, states can decide how to spend it on welfare and create their own welfare program for their state. Now on to public opinion. Public opinion is all about American values. And these are all about generalizations. None of these things are things that hold fast and true in life 100% of the time. So, in America, we believe in majority rule, but minority rights. The idea that even though the majority may all be white, that doesn't mean white people can just do whatever they want to everybody else. We believe in equality. When it comes to equality, we believe in equal opportunity, not necessarily equal results. So the thought in America is that we give everyone a chance to succeed, and if you work hard, you can, but that we won't guarantee that you'll succeed. You have to do that yourself. We believe in private property. If you have the right to own something, the government shouldn't just be able to come in and take it away. If they do need to take it away, that's what we call eminent domain. They have to pay you for it. They can't just take your land and build a highway without giving you your just compensation, your money. We believe in individual freedoms. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press. We believe that you have the right to be free to speak your mind, do what you want, to think what you want. We believe in compromise. That's why we vote on multiple political parties. We believe we have to come together, talk it out, and then get something done. Now, of course, compromise has been hard lately, but that's the idea behind our government. And of course, we believe our government is limited. They can't just do whatever it wants whenever it wants to us, that there are rules. We have a Bill of Rights. We also have our Supreme Court, which is supposed to protect us from when the government violates its own constitution. We're also then split into groups, liberal versus conservative. We know that liberals tend to be African American, they tend to be poor, they tend to be highly educated. They tend to be in the Northeast and the West Coast. We know these things. Conservatives tend to be in the South, tend to be wealthier, tend to be whiter. They tend to be men, while liberals tend to be women. They also tend to be in the Midwest, very religious. Those people are generally conservative. Political socialization. This is how people learn about politics and form their political opinion. The number one source of political socialization is the family. You're exposed to them earliest, and they're the most important thing to you. Schools, like this class right now, teach you about politics and help you form your political opinion. You could belong to an interest group. If you belong to a church, if you belong to Boys and Girls Club, a rec center, you could potentially belong to a student organization that pushes you in a certain political direction. We have demographic factors. Your age, race, and gender can influence how you learn about politics. Of course, the media. Opinion leaders, those could be politicians. It could also just be someone influential in your community, and major events. To measure public opinion, we take polls. A good poll, which we call scientific, will have a random sample that's also diverse and looks like America. If we have 10% African Americans, then 10% of the survey needs to be African Americans. The questions have to be valid, which means clear, fair, and unbiased. It needs to be controlled, so you have to make sure you're giving the survey the same way every time. And your analysis must report sampling errors, and look at that, just under 15 minutes.